The reign of the Democrats and Republicans, the two-party system, may finally be coming to an end. Since 1856, one of those parties has been in charge of the United States, but both of those parties have coalesced around what is unaffectionately called the establishment, corporate and political interests that coalesce around the continuation of the American empire. The Republicans were the first to fall, with the Tea Party giving way to MAGA, which has now completely taken over what once was the GOP. And now it's the Democrats who are seeing the writing on the wall, as the old guard are starting to balk at the idea of a Democratic socialist leading the party into the future. People like Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Kirsten Gillibrand, and all of these representatives on this list who refuse to endorse the Democratic nominee for New York City. Vote blue no matter who, right? Well, now that the Democratic establishment's ass is really over the fire, it looks like some of them are deciding to turn coat rather than be dragged kicking and screaming into a free and equal society. Here's the headline from the Daily Beast's newsletter, The Swamp. Republicans and Democrats in secret talks to create a third party. Disgruntled Republicans, sick of being bullied by Donald Trump, aren't we all? And Democrat centrists, boo, imperiled by the left, are secretly having conversations about forming a third party in American politics. The hush-hush talks took a bizarre turn on Monday night when Elon Musk once more threatened to launch his own America First party, as Donald Trump's big beautiful bill squeaked through the Senate. The idea of a third major force in Washington is hardly new, but the Swamp understands that some serious names are involved, and if agreement can be reached, they believe it could transform the face of U.S. politics. The names involved are said to be of national significance, although they have not necessarily all decided to break away from the two-party structure. The talks are continuing in private, as they always do. The Republican Party, as many of us know it, no longer exists, said one source, who asked not to be named. We do not recognize ourselves anymore in Trump's administration, so these are the never-Trump Republicans. There is a strong movement out there in the party to reclaim the values we were raised on and reclaim the middle ground. Yikes. That's a scary concept when these guys were raised on the likes of Hulk Hogan. A Democratic Party insider also confirmed to the Swamp that there have been some cross-party discussions. The talks began before progressive Zohran Mamdani's shockingly decisive win over former Governor Andrew Cuomo in the New York mayoral Democratic primary. But the implications of the result hardened the resolve of some members to make big changes. Now, this isn't the first time that we've seen something like this. The same playbook was used just a few years ago by none other than the progressive in name only, Pinot, Andrew Yang. Back in 2022, Bernie bro turned failed Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang joined forces with the former governor of New Jersey, Christine Todd Whitman, to form the Forward Party. But fooling absolutely no one, this new centrist party was formed in order to continue the financial interests of corporate donors everywhere. The merger involved the Renew America movement, formed in 2021 by dozens of former officials in the Republican administration of Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump. So not exactly a people first party, and they haven't really done much in the few years since they formed. No one is inspired by pretty much the same thing, but with a new face. I'm talking to you, Kristi Noem. And while the Democrats have been putting their fingers in their ears for the last couple decades, doing everything in their power to fight progress from the left, conservatives have been pointing to this growing trend of democratic socialism slowly wearing away at the Democratic establishment for years. Here's an article by Lee Edwards, one of the demons in residence at the Harvard Foundation, who are responsible for Project 2025. Here's the headline from the Heritage Foundation. The Democratic Socialists of America aren't winning elections, but they are influencing Democrats. Now, this was posted back in 2019, so obviously Democratic Socialists not winning elections is kind of a thing of the past. Of course, this article is written for fear-mongering purposes, but this key takeaway is kind of true. The largest socialist political organization in the country, the Democratic Socialists of America, wants to turn the Democratic Party into the Socialist Party. That would be pretty awesome, wouldn't it? This fear-mongering comes from the very real understanding that socialist policy is very popular in America. And if you need any evidence that the Democrats are also doing this kind of fear-mongering, not against Donald Trump, the tyrant, but against the boogeyman known as socialism, well, then check this out. Just in the last few months, Minneapolis's DFL bought a whole-ass website in order to distance themselves from the DSA, claiming that the DFL, the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, and the Democratic Socialists of America need to remain distinct political groups. Their fear comes from DSA members slowly but surely winning elections and taking over the Democratic infrastructure. The election of these 4 socialist-endorsed candidates was possible because the DSA has been successful at taking over the machinery of the Minneapolis DFL party. For example, the former Minneapolis DFL chair, Breonna Rose Lee, is a member of DSA, and DSA founding member Sam Doughton is on the Minneapolis DFL Executive Committee. This control of the machinery of the DFL party has real-world consequences. Yeah, good real-world consequences. Leftist populist policy is the only way to beat Donald Trump. We saw it with Zohran Mamdani in New York City after he swung multiple districts that went to Trump back over to the left. And Donald Trump knows the danger of having a popular socialist politician leading New York City. Here he is saying he's going to do everything in his power to strong-arm Zohran when he inevitably becomes mayor. He tweeted, "As President of the United States, I'm not going to let this communist lunatic destroy New York. Rest assured, I hold all the levers and have all the cards. I'll save New York City and make it hot and great again, just like I did with the good old USA." As the President of the United States, he doesn't actually have that much control over New York City, but that's not going to stop him from trying. And here's what Zohran said in response to Trump. This man knows exactly what to say to use Trump's vitriolic hatred towards him as a launching pad to success.
Yesterday, Donald Trump said that I should be arrested. He said that I should be deported. He said that I should be denaturalized. And he said those things about me, someone who stands to be the first immigrant mayor of this city in generations, someone who would also be the first Muslim and the first South Asian mayor in this city's history. Less so because of who I am, because of where I come from, because of how I look or how I speak, and more so because he wants to distract from what I fight for. I fight for working people. I fight for the very people that have been priced out of this city, and I fight for the same people that he said he was fighting for. This is the same president who ran on a campaign of cheaper groceries, who ran on a campaign about easing a suffocating cost of living crisis. And ultimately, it is easier for him to fan the flames of division than to acknowledge the ways in which he has betrayed those working class Americans, not just in this city, but across this country, and the ways in which he continues to betray them. Because we know that he would rather speak about me than speak about the legislation that he is shepherding through Washington, D.C.
Now, where did this success come from? Here's the really important part of this video. So if you take away nothing else from this, it's that you can have the same effect that Zohran did if you ran. And he details it in this video that he put out yesterday morning. I won't play the whole thing, but I just want to focus on the steps that he said he took in order to build a people-first platform, which needs to be duplicated by every DSA-supported candidate across the nation in local, state, and federal elections.
1 week ago, we shocked the establishment and redrew the political map with a campaign relentlessly focused on the needs of working people. Since then, a lot of people have asked me if I was surprised by the results. In some ways, I was. We always thought our victory would come after multiple rounds of ranked choice voting. So when we got more first-round votes than Eric Adams got in 7 rounds in the last election, it was astonishing. But in other ways, this was always the plan. We wanted to rebuild a coalition that had frayed over years of disappointment and neglect, to win people back to a Democratic Party that puts working people first. So let's break it down. Last November, New York City saw some of the biggest shifts towards Donald Trump of anywhere in the country. Much of it took place in working class and immigrant neighborhoods. A few days after the election, we went to Hillside Avenue in Queens and Fordham Road in the Bronx, not to lecture, but to listen. And what we heard was a desire to bring down the cost of living. That was our focus, and many of those voters came back. The headline is clear. We can win back voters many have written off if we give them something to vote for, not just tell them what to be against. When Eric Adams eked out a win by 7,000 votes 4 years ago, he called it a mandate and pronounced himself the new face of the Democratic Party. Even then, it was a little ridiculous. We flipped Crown Heights by 45 points, North Corona by 33, and Jamaica by a staggering 57 points. These are the outer borough voters that Eric Adams said he'd bring with him to City Hall. He served as donors instead. Whether we're talking about young voters, older voters, or just plain disaffected New Yorkers, no campaign in recent history has been as successful at driving new voter registrations, especially in the 100 days before the election. Most campaigns focus on triple primes, New Yorkers who voted in the last 3 primaries. But this strategy ignores most of our city, yet we knew that we could turn them out if they saw themselves in our policies. We ran a campaign that tried to talk to every New Yorker, and the coalition that came out on Tuesday reflected the mosaic of these 5 boroughs. We won South Asian neighborhoods by huge margins in places like City Line, Ozone Park, Jamaica Hills. We won Latino neighborhoods like Corona, Washington Heights, Pelham Bay, and Woodhaven. We won many of the same Chinese voters that turned out for Trump in Flushing, Chinatown, and Bensonhurst. And in the final months of the campaign, we narrowed Andrew Cuomo's once sizable lead with black voters, outright winning young black New Yorkers in neighborhoods like Harlem and Flatbush. Andrew Cuomo and his super PAC spent more than $31 million. That's about $87 per vote. We were focused on affordability, and it cost us only $19 per vote. But what you did for us was worth so much more than what money could buy. The result? We shattered everyone's expectations, including our own. A Cuomo spokesperson put it best, saying they had not foreseen our ability to, quote, expand the electorate in such a way that no turnout model or poll was able to capture. Conventional wisdom says the left can only win low turnout elections. We rewrote the rule book by, get this, talking to New Yorkers.
Centrist Democrats joining hands with the never-Trump Republicans is a gift to DSA. It's an abandonment of the democratic infrastructure that has existed for nearly 200 years, an infrastructure which is vitally important for running nationwide campaigns. The Democrats are too feckless, too old, and too out of touch to meet the current moment, and unfortunately for them, Trump is an existential threat. If they're not going to put up the fight to stop him, then they're going to be forced to step aside while somebody else does. From this point on, it's pretty clear that the Democratic Civil War has started, and the Cuomo, Schumer, Jeffries coalition has more money, but they have no substance. And Zohran will tell you that money isn't everything. I'm Tony Hinderman with U.S. Democratic Socialists, and I'll see you next time.